to wash the whole night away. Marissa Cole pulled her thin jacket tighter around herself as she knelt on the cold concrete. Her 5-year-old son, Liam, curled up against her chest. His small face was still streaked with dried tears, his breaths uneven and in sleep. She rocked him gently, trying to shield him from the wind that kept slicing under the doorway. The heavy iron gate behind her had slammed shut minutes earlier. Daphne Whitlock, her mother-in-law, had forced them both out with the rigid finality of someone shutting a door on a stranger. She had not raised her voice. That almost made it worse. Daphne had simply pointed to the broken ceramic vase on the living room floor and told Marissa she had done enough damage to this family. Liam had only bumped into the table while running to show his grandmother a drawing he made. It did not matter. Nothing Marissa did in that house mattered. Her father-in-law stood in the hallway during the confrontation, silent as stone. He did not look at her. He did not look at the child. When Daphne ordered Marissa to leave, he stepped aside as if making room for a passing shadow. For 3 years Marissa had lived in that house. 3 years of working double shifts, handing over her paychecks, keeping the home in order, hoping her effort would somehow soften the cold edges around her. She had stayed because she believed it was the only way to honor her husband, Benjamin, who had vanished in a plane crash that was never fully explained. She clung to the Whitlocks because they were the last pieces of him she had left. Now she was sitting outside their door, soaked through, with no money, no car, and nowhere to go in the middle of the night. When Liam stirred and whimpered, Marissa whispered that everything would be all right even though she did not know how. She lifted her head and scanned the dark street. The storm made every sound sharper. Every shadow looked like a threat. She pressed her lips to Liam's forehead and stood, cradling him against her shoulder, moving toward the road, because standing still felt too close to giving up. She had just reached the curb when a black SUV slowed beside her. The window rolled down. The driver leaned forward, illuminated by the dashboard lights. Marissa froze. She recognized the face immediately. Emery Whitlock, Benjamin's younger sister, the same woman who had cut ties with the entire family 3 years ago, and had not spoken a word to Marissa since. Emery stared at her for a long moment before speaking in a low voice that did not match the storm around them. "Get in the car, Marissa. There is something I need to tell you about my brother, and you will want to hear it." Marissa hesitated for a moment, holding Liam closer as she looked into the SUV. Emery Whitlock had always kept a careful distance from the rest of the family, even before Benjamin disappeared. She had been the one who challenged her parents, the one who refused to fit neatly into the Whitlock mold. Then, 3 years ago, she vanished from their lives entirely. No explanations, no updates, no calls, just gone. Now she was back, sitting behind the wheel of a spotless black SUV, her expression steady but shadowed by something Marissa could not read. Marissa slid into the passenger seat, gently adjusting Liam so he stayed asleep. The warmth of the car wrapped around her like a blanket. Emery pulled away from the curb without another word, driving with a calmness that contrasted sharply with the storm raging outside. They did not speak until they reached a high-rise building in downtown Charlotte. Emery parked in a private garage and led Marissa to an apartment on the 22nd floor. The moment the door opened, Marissa realized Emery had changed. The apartment was neat, modern, and quiet. No trace of the rebellious girl who once dyed her hair blue and swore she would never live within 4 walls that smelled like order and discipline. Emery set a towel on the counter and gestured for Marissa to dry off. Then she opened a drawer and slid out a small recording device. "Listen to this," she said quietly. Marissa pressed play. She heard Daphne's voice first, sharp as glass. Daphne was complaining about the cost of keeping Marissa and Liam in the house, calling them burdens. She mentioned the money Benjamin had saved over a decade, money that had been withdrawn in large amounts shortly before he disappeared. Then came Ellis Whitlock's voice, tense and trembling. He said they could not let Marissa learn the truth about the missing funds. He said everything would fall apart if she did. Marissa felt her stomach twist. She replayed a part just to make sure she had heard correctly. Benjamin had saved carefully for years, planning for his family's future. He trusted his parents, and they had drained nearly all of it. As the recording ended, Emery folded her arms and leaned against the counter. Her eyes were steady but tired. "There is more," Emery said. "A lot more. I have been looking into what happened to my brother. I think he knew something dangerous, and I believe someone wanted to silence him." Marissa felt the room tilt slightly, as if the floor beneath her had shifted. "What are you saying, Emery?" Emery exhaled slowly. I am saying Benjamin may not have died the way everyone claims, and the answers he left behind are meant for you, but you will have to go back into that house to find them. Marissa sat at the small kitchen table long after the recording ended. The sound of Daphne's voice still echoed in her ears, sharp and cold. She tried to steady her breathing, but every new thought seemed to unravel something inside her. Emery poured her a cup of warm tea and waited, letting the silence settle between them. When Marissa finally looked up, her voice was barely above a whisper. What do you need me to find in that house? Emery opened her laptop and pulled up a scanned image. It was a small wooden box with a carved pattern on the lid. Benjamin gave that box to you a few weeks before the crash, Emery said. He never told anyone what was inside, not even me. But he mentioned that if anything ever happened to him, you were the only person he trusted to hold whatever he left behind. Marissa frowned as memories surfaced. She remembered Benjamin handing her the box late one night, telling her it was not urgent and that she could open it on their anniversary. She had tucked it into a drawer, planning to surprise him by pretending she had forgotten. The crash happened 2 days later. Everything after that became a blur of grief, paperwork, and unanswered questions. Somewhere in that chaos, the box had been moved into storage at the Whitlock's house. It should still be in your old room, Emery said. I tried to look for it once, but Daphne changed the locks and kept everything under her watch. She never wanted anyone going through Benjamin's things. Marissa tightened her grip on the cup. The thought of returning to that house made her chest ache. She had spent years trying to earn a place in that family, absorbing every slight, hoping kindness would eventually soften them. Now she knew nothing she did ever mattered. I do not know if they will let me back in, Marissa said. They will if you give them what they want, Emery replied. You know how they think. You know what they value. Marissa knew respectability, control, appearances, having someone in the house who cooked, cleaned, and made them look like generous people. If you go back, Emery continued, you cannot let them see you are suspicious. You are there to work, to help, to stay quiet. That is what they expect from you. Use that. Marissa looked toward the window. The storm had begun to ease, but the streets were still slick and shining. She glanced down at Liam, sleeping peacefully on the couch, unaware of the world shifting around them. She set the empty cup aside and straightened her shoulders. I will go back, she said. I will find the box. But once I do, I want to know everything. No more secrets. Emery nodded without hesitation. Then tomorrow we start. The next morning, Marissa returned to the Whitlock house just after sunrise. The storm from the night before had left the yard soaked, with small branches scattered across the driveway. She held Liam's hand as they walked up the steps. Her heart thudded with every footfall, but she kept her expression steady. She had spent years perfecting the art of staying small in this house. Today she used that skill. Daphne opened the door with a cool stare. She did not apologize for the night before. She only said that the house needed cleaning and that Marissa should start with the kitchen. Marissa lowered her gaze, nodding, letting Daphne believe she had returned out of desperation rather than purpose. The day passed slowly. Marissa cooked breakfast, folded laundry, and scrubbed the tile floors. She moved through the house without drawing attention, watching and waiting for the moment when Daphne would leave. Around mid-afternoon, Daphne announced she had a committee meeting and stepped out, leaving Marissa alone with Liam and Ellis. Ellis was in the backyard repairing a loose fence board. He rarely came inside unless Daphne called for him. Marissa took a deep breath and headed for the hallway that once led to her room. She tried the door, still locked. She returned to the kitchen and wiped down the counters, thinking. Then she opened the drawer where Ellis kept his small tools. He never hid anything. She found a thin metal pick, slipped it into her pocket, and waited for the sound of his hammer outside to grow louder. With Liam quietly playing in the living room, Marissa returned to the locked door. Her hands trembled as she worked the pick into the small gap near the handle. It took longer than she hoped, but eventually the lock clicked open. She exhaled and stepped inside. The air in the room felt stale. Furniture was covered with sheets. A faint smell of cedar lingered from the old dresser. Marissa went straight to the top shelf of the closet, where she remembered storing a suitcase years ago. Standing on a chair, she reached up and pulled it down. Dust rose in a soft cloud. Inside the suitcase lay the wooden box. Her pulse quickened as she lifted it. It felt heavier than she remembered. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened the lid. Only a wedding photo rested inside. She stared, confused. This could not be all Benjamin meant to leave her. Instinct guided her more than logic. She turned the photo over. In the center of the backing, a small square of tape held something in place. She peeled it back and found a micro SD card, no larger than her fingernail. Before she could process the discovery, she heard a car door slam outside. Daphne was home early. Marissa slipped the SD card into her pocket and quickly repositioned everything. She shut the suitcase, placed it back on the shelf, and pulled the door closed just as Daphne's footsteps entered the hallway. Marissa hurried to the laundry room and pretended to sort clothes. Her heart raced as Daphne passed by without stopping. When the house fell quiet again, Marissa knew one thing with absolute certainty. Benjamin had left her clues. And those clues pointed to a truth much larger than she had ever imagined. That evening, after returning to Mary's apartment, Marissa sat on the couch with the small SD card resting in her palm. Emery watched her closely, waiting for her to speak, but Marissa could only manage a slow breath. She felt as if the world had quietly shifted under her feet. They inserted the card into Emery's laptop. A folder appeared almost instantly. Inside were several short video clips labeled with dates from the months before Benjamin's disappearance. Marissa clicked the first one. The recording showed Benjamin in his office, pacing, running his hands through his hair with a tension she rarely saw in him. Papers were spread across his desk, and he kept glancing toward the door as if expecting someone to walk in. Marissa felt a chill rise along her arms. The second video showed him speaking with a man she did not recognize. The stranger wore a tailored suit and carried himself with the confidence of someone used to getting whatever he wanted. His name came up as they argued. Victor Hale. His voice was sharp and calm at the same time, the kind of tone that suggested he did not raise his voice because he did not need to. Victor mentioned a land development project. Benjamin pushed back. The disagreement grew tense. Then the video cut off. Another clip showed Benjamin meeting with Ellis, his father. The conversation was muted, but their expressions were clear. Benjamin was frustrated. Ellis looked cornered. Marissa closed the laptop. Her hands were shaking now. Why would Benjamin record any of this, she asked. Because he knew something was coming, Emery said quietly. He must have been gathering proof. Marissa leaned back, overwhelmed. The South Dakota card was only the beginning. There were pieces missing, details that refused to fit together. As she tried to make sense of what she had seen, a memory came to her, a simple one. A moment so ordinary that she never thought it could matter. Benjamin gave me a cactus the week before he left, she said slowly. He told me it was a reminder to stay strong. He never talked like that without a reason. Emery straightened. Do you still have it? Marissa nodded. They went to the small balcony where she had placed the cactus earlier to get some light. Emery examined it closely, turning it in her hands. One of the spines looked different from the others. Thicker, too smooth. Emery pressed lightly. The spine shifted, revealing a seam. Inside was a tiny GPS chip. Marissa stared at it, her breath caught in her throat. When Emery connected the device to her laptop, a single coordinate appeared on the screen. A remote section near the Blue Ridge Mountains. Far from any main road. Far from anything familiar. Marissa felt her heartbeat slow into something heavier. Benjamin had left her a trail. And this trail led into the mountains. The coordinates led to a narrow stretch of road in the Blue Ridge Mountains, far from any town. The next morning, Marissa and Emery met with Caleb Monroe, Benjamin's closest friend from college. Caleb had once worked in data security and still kept enough contacts to help them move quietly. When he heard about the SD card and the GPS chip, his expression tightened in a way that told Marissa he had suspected something like this for years. Caleb made a call to Ben Wyatt, a retired investigator who had mentored Benjamin during a community project. Wyatt lived less than an hour from the coordinates. Although he spoke calmly, Marissa could hear urgency beneath his words. He told them to wait for him at a gas station near the mountain base. He would meet them there and move ahead with caution. Marissa held Liam's hand while they waited. He played with a small plastic truck on the sidewalk, unaware of the weight pressing on the adults around him. Emery kept scanning the area while Caleb checked the map again and again, as if hoping the coordinates would change. Wyatt arrived 20 minutes later in an old pickup truck. His presence was steady and grounded, and Marissa felt a flicker of reassurance for the first time. He listened carefully as they explained what they had found. When Marissa mentioned Victor Hale's name, Wyatt's expression darkened. "I know that name," he said, "and it never shows up anywhere good." They moved into the mountains in 2 vehicles. The road became rougher until it finally turned into a dirt path. Trees grew thick overhead, blocking most of the midday sun. The coordinates pointed to a large property that seemed abandoned at first glance. The windows were boarded, and the fence had rusted along its edges. Still, Wyatt motioned for everyone to stay behind him. Inside the property, a narrow concrete path led to a structure that resembled an old lodge. Wyatt signaled for them to stop. He approached a side door, listening before slowly pushing it open. From inside came a faint sound, a man's voice, weak, strained. Wyatt stepped back and whispered, "He is here." Everything after that moved quickly. They entered through different sides of the building. Marissa and Emery followed Wyatt down a narrow hallway while Caleb circled the back to cut off any exit. They reached a basement door. Wyatt gestured for silence, then opened it. In the dim light, Marissa saw Emery tied to a wooden support beam, a cloth pressed against her mouth. Next to her, on a thin mattress, was Benjamin. His face was pale, his body too thin, his hands bound. He looked as if months had worn him down to the edge of nothing. Standing over him was Victor Hale. He did not seem surprised to see them. Instead, he gave a small nod, as if he had expected this moment. "So this is the family," he said quietly. Behind him stood Ellis and Daphne Whitlock. They looked terrified, yet unwilling to move. Marissa felt her knees weaken. The betrayal ran deeper than she feared. Victor lifted a small flash drive. "I want everything Benjamin collected. Every copy. Every file. Bring it here, and maybe I let you walk out." Marissa stepped forward. Her voice did not shake. "You will not hurt him again." Victor tilted his head with a trace of boredom. "That is not your call." Wyatt raised his hand. His signal was calm but firm. "Now." From behind Victor, Caleb appeared, silent and precise. At the same moment, Wyatt lunged forward. The room erupted in motion. Victor tried to pull a weapon, but Wyatt reached him first, knocking it aside. Caleb grabbed Ellis, forcing him to the ground. Emery kicked the chair next to her, distracting Daphne long enough for Wyatt to restrain her. Within seconds, Victor was pinned. His plans, threats, and leverage had vanished in the same moment Marissa stepped into the room. She moved to Benjamin, kneeling beside him. His eyes opened slowly. Recognition flickered, soft but real. "Marissa," he whispered. She took his hand, her voice steady for the first time in months. "I found you, and we are taking you home." The authorities arrived within minutes. Wyatt had already called them once Victor was restrained, and the remote location made the response team move fast once they had a confirmed visual. Officers escorted Victor out first, his expression unreadable as they placed him in the back of a patrol car. He did not shout or resist. He only stared ahead, as if calculating his next move even with his hands cuffed. Ellis and Daphne were taken out next. Daphne kept insisting she had no idea what Victor had done, and that she was only trying to protect her family. Ellis did not say anything at all. His shoulders sagged, and his eyes stayed fixed on the gravel beneath his feet. For a moment, Marissa almost felt pity, but then she remembered the recording. She remembered the night they locked her out in the storm. Inside the lodge, Caleb and Emery worked together to untie Benjamin. He was weak enough that they had to lift him slowly, supporting his arms on either side. When he tried to stand, his legs buckled, but he gave a faint nod that he wanted to keep going. Marissa stepped forward, placing her hand gently on his. He looked at her as if afraid she might be another illusion. "You are safe now," she said. "We are here." Medical teams arrived and took Benjamin into a transport vehicle. Before they closed the doors, he reached for Marissa's hand again. His voice was barely there, but she heard it clearly. "Thank you for not giving up." Over the following days, the investigation grew wider. Victor faced multiple charges including kidnapping, extortion, fraud, and several counts related to the land scheme. Ellis and Daphne were charged as accomplices for their role in covering up the disappearance and for the financial fraud involving Benjamin's savings. Their trial attracted attention from the local news, but Marissa kept her distance. She had lived too long under the weight of their judgment to care what they said now. Benjamin remained in the hospital for weeks. Each day he grew a little stronger. The first time he walked from his bed to the window without assistance, Marissa felt something steady and warm settle in her chest. Emery visited often, sitting by his bed and telling him everything he missed. Caleb stayed involved as well, helping investigators unpack the files Benjamin had collected. When Benjamin was finally discharged, they left Charlotte behind. The city held too many shadows, too many reminders of what they had lost. They chose a quiet rental cabin near a lake in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The air was clean. The nights were still. Liam chased fireflies along the water while Marissa cooked simple meals and listened to the soft rhythm of Benjamin breathing beside her. For the first time in years, life felt possible again. Weeks passed before Marissa allowed herself to breathe without expecting something to go wrong. The cabin felt like a world untouched by the chaos they had walked through. Each morning, Benjamin sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, watching the sun rise over the lake. His body was still recovering, but his eyes carried more life than they had in a long time. Sometimes he would reach for Marissa's hand and simply hold it, as if grounding himself in the steady presence he had been separated from for so long. Liam grew more relaxed too. He laughed more, slept deeply, and began showing his father all the drawings he had kept hidden in a small folder under his bed. One evening, as the sky shifted into soft shades of blue and gold, Benjamin asked Marissa what kept her going in the days when everything felt impossible. She did not answer right away. Instead, she watched Liam run along the edge of the water, his footsteps leaving temporary marks on the sand. "I could not let the story end the way they wanted it to," she finally said. "I had to believe there was more than what they told me." Benjamin nodded. The truth did not save him overnight, but it gave him something to hold on to. And in that quiet moment, with the lake reflecting the fading light, Marissa understood her journey more clearly than ever. Strength does not always look loud. Sometimes it is the decision to take one more step when the ground feels unsteady. Sometimes it is choosing to trust your own voice when everyone else tries to silence it. Their path ahead was uncertain, but it no longer frightened her. They had survived betrayal, fear, and loss. What remained was theirs to rebuild with patience and care. Before going inside, Marissa turned toward the camera of the world she imagined listening to her story and spoke softly. If this journey meant something to you, share where you are watching from. Leave a comment. Pass the story along if you know someone who needs the reminder that standing up for yourself is not selfish. Sometimes it is the first step towards saving your life.